What? You want to fight crime? Let's get dangerous. Showtime.
And yes, it is showtime. And once again, it is Saturday, and we are here for another episode of From the Desk of the Small Press Publisher. I'm your host, Joe D. McPhee here, and we got a pretty decent show here, and one that might get me canceled because there's going to be a lot of harsh truth that's going to be talked about in tonight's topic. But before we get into that, we do have to deal with our business ends of the things here, dealing with the show here, and I will get into some of the other things that we need to talk about as well. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get the business in out of the way here by saying, if it pops up here, it didn't select it. Okay, now it's selected. Good. We got stupid o'clock. It's actually happening right now. Usually it happens 1 hour into our show here, and my graphic is not loading on the tablet. Great. Worked perfectly fine for when we did it for Comic Book Spectrum, but not for this here. So I'm not going to worry about the graphic. Stupid Clock is actually on right now. If you want to go ahead and catch that, or have it split screen, you got two different devices, have me on one screen and have them on the other. That is then followed up by Last Man Standing. If they go ahead and have another episode of that this week here, then you get that respite until Monday when you have Nicholas Tucker and Nevermind the Furthermore. And let us not forget about, if this will work here, it's not loading the graphics. So we got Comic Book Spectrum coming up this upcoming Thursday at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. And without further ado, we're just going to go right into new comic book pickups for the week. And I don't understand what's going on with the tablet here. The tablet is doing its own thing, but then again, the Wi-Fi and not being able to control everything the way that we would normally would go about doing so here. Okay, that's working. It's just not doing its normal stuff here. I want to get me over to the comments here. So while it's trying to make up its mind and what it's going to do, we're just going to go right into new comic book pickups for the week here. And I know what we're going to do here. I'm going to do it this way. See, there's more than one way to skin a cat. Just gotta do it the old-fashioned way, just like Scrooge McDuck. Think smarter, not harder. And trust me, sometimes it's not that easy to do here. But nevertheless, it is something that is easy to take care of. And it's going to show me that we are live. And I need to go. Come on, keep up with me. Where nobody, nobody's talking about you right now, Parallax. Unless Aaron is talking bad about you. And yeah, I like Ben sounds and everything to that magnitude. It is what it is for right now. And hopefully the tablet keeps up with me now. And we're going to get that out the way. I don't need to see the remote control here. I said remove. There we go. Now it's just me. So we got new comic book pickups for the week here. We got everything going. No, we're not kicking her out here. Again, I swear you're working on being permanently blackballed from that list here. Yeah, I do say that. I do say that for a reason because I hate to say it that way, the internet is kind of fickle in those regards here. But nevertheless, let's go ahead with new comic book pickups for the week. So we're going to start off with Chick #1 from Image Comics here. And surprisingly enough, that is a weird within itself, kind of like a one and done book, which had multiple covers to it. So I finally learned in CLZ that I always thought this was two different one shots, but it's really the same book, two different covers here. So this was actually the cover A and this was the cover B. So that was kind of like the interesting thing that I learned over this past week here. We're going to follow that up with Heroes for Hire from the first series, issue #7, which is pretty nice. And I'm going to get to more of the comics as it will allow me to do so here. Oh, Aaron said he didn't say any of that. And then it's like, oh yeah, I saw him now. I was talking to Matt, figured out the secret sauce. I'm usually here before the show. So if you get here before the show, I will talk to you behind the scenes and everything while I'm getting everything ready. So he's already found the secret sauce behind that. Yeah, it's feedback central because I'm using another device to kind of control the show as we go along here. So that's pretty much the reason why. And Aaron is trying to egg a certain person on. And we all know that this is a lie. Because if that was true, if that was true, you wouldn't be correcting people all the time. So we know that's a lie. It is. And then you're like, yeah, right. Like I actually would say something like that. And that's where he was saying that he didn't say any of that as a whole here. And that's where he was like, oh, sweet. Yeah. If you get here early, if I'm actually around and you actually ask me questions or make a comment about like you did about how you felt about one of the characters for primetime Saturday night, I will respond to it. That's just the way that I am here. Can't we all just get along? It's like, yeah, they are. They are. It's like you have to understand the difference between the petty bickering and when they really get into it. Just like sometimes how people sometimes think that Leia and I gets into actual real arguments when we really don't. Yeah, it's just that's just the way that it is here. But getting back to the new comic book pickups for the week here, we got an Inhumans number 8 that came in, which is nice for those who like the Bronze Age stuff. So with the camera being the way that it is now, I think I got less glare, and I will explain why the camera looks kind of more askew in a bit here. And then we got Inhumans number 10. And then I finally got an Inhumans number 24. So we're getting closer and closer to finishing up volume 1 of New Mutants. And New Mutants number 26 from volume 1. And a New Mutants number 2 from volume 2. Even though this tag says volume 5, I knew it was issue number 2. And then we got, for those who love Kirby, New Gods number 5, getting the glare out. And then we also got New Gods number 6. And then New Gods number 9, getting the glare out here. And that's going to be followed up by issue number 10 of New Gods, which is great. And then Parallax is saying only Dubros don't like Kirby. That's true. That is true. That there is a lot of truth in that. Because there's going to be something that Kirby has done that you actually will like in some form or some fashion. I will agree to that here. And that's where Matt is saying Kirby, all hail the king. Yep, I agree. He has done books that people have liked in some form or some fashion here. So from volume 3 of X Factor, we got another copy of X Factor 38, another copy of issue number 40. One of the issues that I believe I was missing here is 43, 44, and 45. So I'm getting closer to finishing off that series here. And that brings us to West Coast Avengers Annual number 4, which belongs to the Atlantis Attacks mini-series here. And this is one of the issues that I kind of like read over and over and over again, because this is talking about this I forgot the 7 brides of I think of the 7 brides of the Serpent Crown from Atlantis, if I remember the story correctly. My memory is not the best, but I do remember that Atlantis Attack was about the Serpent Crown more so than anything else here. And then we got from the second run of Cloak and Dagger, we got issue number 8. Getting the glare, I have to remind myself camera is a little bit different, so this way I could get the glare out. So that's issue number 8. And then issue number 10. So I think we're getting closer to having all of volume 2 done. And then I ended up finding the missing pieces to this one series that I just started to collect here. So we got Sisterhood of the Steel issue number 7 and issue number 8, which means that technically we have completed the run for Sisterhood of the Steel, and we have to do. So that one is done. Then we got a Spirit issue number 6. Oh, I did not know. Oh, hold on. Yeah, I just live. That's like, I just live off of Yancey Street near Jack Kirby Way. Yep, that is official now. They have made that official in New York here. And yep, exactly. I wasn't sure if it was set or not, but that is correct, Tori. Yep. And then it's like Matt and I are backstage talking, watching you. Yep. Okay. Cool. And then Beanie is like, "Yay, fanfare time." Yep. That's the whole thing. When you complete the collection, we have to make certain that people know that we got it complete here. And then it's like, yeah, it's a great way to name a street. Yep, great person to name a street after. Yep, I agree. Yeah, the building he grew up in on the block and everything is still standing. Cool. I did not know that. I did not know that the building was still intact here. So we talked about Spirit number 6 already. So we're going to move on to Spirit number 9. So we're getting close. We're filling in gaps in the kitchen sink run. Unfortunately, I did not have. I will explain that a little bit later. I'm not going to go get into it just yet because that's going to be a part of the production update here. There it is, X Factor number 22, and we're getting closer for that being completed here. Now, these next couple of books here, if I was able to find a issue number 9, we could have actually hit the horn one more time for this, but it's almost completed. Even though you're not going to see every issue here, this run right here almost completes everything that I got here. But the only one that I'm missing so far is issue number 9. So we got the all new Adam. This is if I remember, this is Raymond Choi's Adam. So we got issue number 1, issue number 3, another copy of issue number 3, I believe. I already have 2, 4, and I believe 3. Issue number 5, 6, 7, 8, missing 9, so we're going right to 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and the last issue of 25. So it's almost a complete run of Ryan Choi's as the Atom, which is a very good pickup here. And then from our normal favorite comic book pirate, I did end up getting America's Graded from AC Comics. I wonder if this is truly a flip book. No, it's not a flip book. It's not one of the flip books here. But this reprints a lot of the golden age classics again in black and white. So we had like, now I actually own an issue of Tiger Girl. There was only one issue of Tiger Girl that ever was came into existence, but they got the rights to reprint Tiger Girl, or at least a story from Tiger Girl from one of the golden age stories. And then we got Senorita Rio, which is also from the golden age. It's a reprint. And Maista from the golden age. So these classics are back there. And then Conga is another one from the golden age, and I believe that's the last. No, I take that back. Futura was the last story in this golden age grace here, and this is or America's Greatest, and this was issue number 14 from the reprints from AC Comics. So that's kind of cool here. And it's like he said, Aaron saying, I watched the video when they named the street Love, Steranko's Talk, and the Memories of Kirby. Yep, that was kind of nice. And then Bean says, we print on newsprint, as Mr. that's Mr. Aaron says. And then Matt is saying, I have been getting into the AC Comics. Yes, one of the things about AC Comics is that outside of Film Force and the Sentinels of Justice, a lot of the stuff are like them getting the licenses to reprint a lot of the older Golden Age stories that you can't get too often here, and they normally print it in black and white, as opposed to some of the older 4-color stories here. And then we got Free Comic Book Day, Mean Girls Senior Year. I might end up reading that here shortly. I don't know. And then we got a couple more issues of Liberty Metals here. And this is the one thing. Okay, there we go. So we got an issue number 10 of Liberty Metals. And this is a signed copy of Liberty Metals. I don't remember what issue number it is, but it does have the Frank Choi signature right there, signed in, it looks like 2007. So that's pretty nice here. And then Tara likes to say AC is good stuff. So many great golden age stuff that would have been semi lost to time. Exactly. That plus it costs an arm and a leg to try to collect it now. And that's the bad thing about it. I recently read Night Evil number 3 by AC, and it freaking rocks. I'm glad that you read Night Vale. Night Vale, I believe. No, I think I completed. No, I completed Night Vale. I completed the Night Vale series. It was Dragonfly. Dragonfly I haven't completed as of yet. That was the last AC comic series that I haven't completed was Dragonfly. But I believe I completed all of Night Vale. The other one that I'm trying to find all the copies of is Blue Bullet Tear. And I believe the connection between Blue Bullet Tear and Night Vale is that mother and daughter. While Mother was more, of the, 1930s type crime fighter, the daughter went more occult and became a crime fighter that way. And then Parallax is cheering on Aaron here. And then it's like my daddy just fed his friend. It's like my daddy just fed his friend in Indiana. She is full and it's like, oh my tummy. I guess in a weird way, it's like for her it was a full belly. For you, it was just a Saturday. Yeah, I sold some Film Force last year, and now you regret it. Yeah, and I'm still trying to get the last half of the Film Force. Past I got past 109 issues without missing, and then it's like the last 92, 93 issues that I'm missing here and there. I don't have like the full run of it because it goes, I believe right now they're like 207 or 206 issues. I can't, don't quote me on that, but that's what I last remember off the top of my head here. And then, Erin saying Beanie rocks. Yes, she does. And then, as you say, for me, it was just a snack. uh, Competition here. So we're going to continue up with Jughead number 98. And then I'm getting closer to completing All New Wolverine, the very first volume of All New Wolverine, which is issue number 4 here, which is nice. And then we also have Scarlet issue number 9, which I thought was going to make us have the ringing of the horns here for completing Scarlet until I found out that there was a issue 18 and I was missing that. Oh well, stuff happens here. We're going to go into this next pile here, which I'm going to have to preface by saying, giving a shout out to Time Tunnel Collects here, because what came this week surprised me, and I'm happy that he thought of me here because he primarily focuses in on really bronze, silver, and golden age books here. So I got this from him. I actually bought this. This is Venture Comics number 397, and this is the issue where Supergirl's costume change. And like, it's a weird ass key. And yeah, I'm going to say it's a weird ass key because who cares about a costume change in continuity here? But some people consider that a key issue, so it is what it is. But the reason I give Todd over there at Time Tunnel Collects here a shout out because he thought of me because again, he primarily works with bronze, gold, bronze, silver, and gold, and really more so golden age and silver age more than bronze. Whenever he gets like modern stuff, he just gives it away. So he kind of gifted me one complete set of volume 3 of Mr. Miracle. So just showing you guys again, there it is, the whole run from issue 1 through issue number 7 of volume 3. Now, mind you, I do have all of this here, but it's like, it's nice to be thought of when you can be gifted full runs of stuff and you can make good use of it here. And I got another copy of the Mr. Miracle Special number 1 on top of that here, which is also nice. So just for that, we're going to go ahead and do and we're probably going to do it one more time because this last block here is just about the full run of volume 2. The only thing that's missing is a issue number 20, but I already have issue number 20. So that is damn near another full run of volume 2 of Mr. Miracle from the 80s. And the 80s run was pretty decent here because in the 80s run, Scott was more or less kind of like, the escape artist that was pretty much focusing on the craft of being an escape artist and being a superhero and knowing the whole thing about the anti-life equation and everything. So they kind of made him and Bart kind of acclimate more to to Earth here. And this issue is kind of important because this is where Scott would be in space while Shiloh would be on Earth. So Shiloh is on Earth, being Mr. Miracle on Earth while Scott was in space here. And then, they kind of solidified that Shiloh is truly the next Mr. Miracle at this point. But a lot of this is dealing with Scott Free. And there it is, issue number 28, the last issue again for that here. So that was damn near another full run of volume 2 of Mr. Miracle. And we're going to get, I know we got more comments here, so I'm getting to, hold on. So yeah, it's like, I like All New Wolverine written by Tom Taylor. Yep. Honey Badger and all of that. Yep. And then it's like I have all of the all original art of X-23 Wolverine by artist Nick Varela, who did Enemy of the State 2 for All New Wolverine. Cool. That's kind of cool. That's nice to know here. I would call it a minor key. Yeah. I bet that she was talking about the Adventure Comics here. Yeah, it depends on if the suit looks good. Well, again, I don't know. I mean, you got people talking about Batman shoelaces being a minor key, so I don't know. Some things I just don't really particularly say that it is a key or not here. And yep, nice Leia, as Aaron would say here. And she said that she needs some Mr. Miracle special. So if I have at least 3 of them, if this makes it, the third one, I may just put it in your pile here. Put one of them in your pile here for you to have one. But that's if I got 3 or more of them. Most likely, I don't think no. Would I have 3 or more? I don't know. I have to check here. Again, going to storage next week is going to be kind of painful because now I got to reorganize boxes here. I might have to take all my Mr. Miracle stuff out. Well, actually, I got separate boxes for volume 2 and volume 3, so I might be okay. On that. Leia pilot. She already knew. It's like if it was an extra, yeah. if it's an extra, then it is. Well, again, that comes from, like I said, it comes from being a good customer and also being one of his moderators. So I kind of help him out on his whatnot shows, and every time he gets something that he definitely knows that he's not going to be able to sell, he's like, okay, I know XYZ is a fan of this here, and that was just very, very nice because I was not expecting it here. So yep, and yep, thank you, Matt, on that here. It was like the adventures of Houdini if he had some special power with a badass wife. Yep. You know what? Now you're making me think about. Now you're making me think about who would win in a real fight. Scott Free or Mandrake. My money is on Scott. Only because you don't know how he does what he does. And they don't really tell you exactly what makes Mr. Miracle Mr. Miracle. And that what makes the whole story about the Seven Soldier story with Shiloh so interesting. Because of everything that he went through to discover his version of the anti-life equation was messed up. It was messed up. I mean, he got drugged through the rocks here. But then again, But then again, Scott went through the whole X pit. So we always know what the X pit really was here. And again, even with inside the X pit, I want to get I want to finish paying off the rest of my stuff from as layer called Curly Q, before I could get my trade paperback version of Barda. During the time that Scott was in the X pit, Barda had made a name for herself as the Breaker of Men. And the legend about her being the Breaker of Men is not really because, she was just really good at fighting. She was the breaker of men's will, meaning that if you try to keep any type of secret from her, she will figure out a way to get it out of you. The only person that she it's left upward to a question mark. Did she truly break Scott free, or did Scott free break her, or is it a little bit of both? Now, mind you, during Granny Goodness training of both of them, they were the only ones that survived a random selection trial, and they survived it together. And the way that it ended up in the animation side of things, well, actually, I take the way that it ended up in, if I remember correctly, it wasn't in the animated, it wasn't in the animation, it was in the Furious miniseries, the 6 issue Furious miniseries. They pretty much went through the trial, together. It's like it was a whole class that went through, and they escaped all of the trials, as a team until like the very end, where only one could survive, because it was like one rafter that was there that a person could actually reach and escape to and be safe from harm. In getting there, and getting there, they kind of had like, a friendship going and everything before this trial. And they got there, and Barter being the way that she is, and even as a juvenile, she was still taller than Scott. She hoisted Scott up to that rafter. Scott was able to get himself clear, and then he realized, it's like, wait a second, Bart's about to die. And in his unwillingness to let Bart die, he maneuvered himself on that rafter for him to be able to reach back down to pull her up. So when the room got flooded, anybody who was not on that rafter was dead. When the room cleared and everything, Granny comes into the room after it was completely drained. She looks up and it's like, oh, we have Scott free. And it's like, I knew it. Bart, I knew there was something special about you. And that's when Bart got specially trained by Granny. She didn't care about Scott completing the trial. She was so happy that Bart did. But that was a whole different, that was a whole nother story altogether here. I need to do a photo shoot of my slap. I just now read what I put on the screen here. I was not paid to entice AA. Oh no, he encouraged you. So that means she's about to do it. That's not done on purpose, though. That's not done on purpose. That's just the way sometimes it happens where when you get stuff that's gifted to you, when you get stuff that people send to you and you just don't know about it, and then when you really start diving into your collection, it's like, how did I get 3 of these? And how did I get 4 of these? And by the way, if anybody wants a copy of the X-Men Onslaught issue, the direct edition, let me know. I still got a whole bunch of them. Only because I was gifted at least 50 of them just recently in near mint. It was like, I don't want them. You can have them. I was like, gee, thanks. Yeah, I'm trying to collect the run of Justice League International. That one is interesting only because of Fire and the dynamic of Fire and Ice and Booster Gold and guy with frictionless foam, Blue Beetle. Yeah, you should hang out with us with Evil Randy. That. Yep, as she call him, the evil pirate. And then that's what I thought. That's what I thought there was going to be a Mr. Miracle, but I still gotta wait. I still gotta wait to see it. And then the whole thing is, are they going to fix the lore correctly? Because the way that I understand the way that they did Mr. Miracle in DC animation as of right now, the Barda that we got in DC animated is Earth 4 Barda. We don't get the original 7 foot tall Barda. We get 6'4" Barda. And the only reason I remember that because I had a big gag reaction about Barda looking Superman eye to eye. I was like, Barda should be towering over Superman, who I knew that Superman was 6'4". It's like, how is she just eye to eye? It's like, that got to be an animated mistake. And then I delved into it. It's like, no, they made Barda in animation 6'4". I was like, yeah, people don't know. People don't read source material anymore. Oh, which one of you is the Captain America collector? I picked up a few dirt cheap in case you need them. That would be Matt. Matt, I believe, is the Captain America. I'm so stoked that Matt is on the show. Yes, I mean it's a nice little breath of fresh air to have Matt here for us to nerd out on comics here. And yep, there he is, Matt saying that he is the Cap collector. I knew that more so than anything else here. Also, Scott Free sleeps with a very very large, strong woman who he says no mamby pamby. I bet Barda can put a hurting. I You gotta read volume 2. You gotta read volume 2. That's all I gotta say. You gotta read volume 2. Volume 2 made me love Barda even more because in volume 2, when they finally settled down on Earth, because they came to Earth to live permanently, Barda decided, oh, I'm about to take this job at a kindergarten. Never having to deal with kids in her life. And you have to understand, Barda can be very militant. And how she dealt with certain situations is funny. But when it comes to the relationship between her and Scott, when it comes to Snoo, Scott had some classic lines that indicates, yeah. When she lays it on him, she lays it on him. That's all I gotta say. But yeah, you gotta read volume 2. You gotta read volume 2 of Mr. Miracle. And yep, Matt is laughing about that. It's like I already had a crush on Big Barda and She-Hulk. Not sure what that says about me. It says a lot about, how can I put this? It says a lot about you like, well, I can't say that about Shoki because it depends on what version of Shoki that you're talking about. Are you talking about early days during Savage? Are we talking about Sensational when she understood that she was a cartoon, not a cartoon, a comic book character, or the recent incarnations since Dan Slott or the Soul Run? With Barda, Kirby knew what he was doing when he created Barda. Barda was always supposed to be a mystery because deep down, Barda is a soldier first before she's female. So she kind of approached things from a military standpoint. And I guess I'm going to ruin this a little bit for you because this is like one of my favorite issues of Mr. Miracle. This is issue number 25. The reason why issue number 25 is like one of my favorites here is because this was the issue where Barda decides, like, you know what, I'm going to go out here, I'm going to try to find some type of physical activity that I could get into. And being that how Earth is and everything and how we are about pro wrestling, she thought pro wrestling was real. So she goes to this pro wrestling organization and everything and tries out for her. And let's just say things got very interesting because she thought that the whole fight was real. And, she quickly learns about how everything works and everything to that magnitude. And pretty much after she pretty much got into the organization, the rest of the women in that organization started training with her. So she had like she was like almost training like another version of the Furies here on Earth. And that's kind of like the way that they took it. So yeah, there's a lot to like about Barda. But the way Kirby made her originally is that she was like the ultra tall but yet unassuming powerhouse. Because it was up here, it's like, oh, it's like everybody would look at it, it's like, oh, hey, baby, it's like, I know you like a tall drink of water. This, I was like, wait a second, you just picked up. Why? It's like, how are you handling a Civil War cannon with one hand, lifting it up, over your shoulder with one hand and taking it to, the site where Mr. Miracle is about to get ready to do his next stunt. And everyone was like, wow, that's a very powerful woman. I'm not certain if I can handle something like that. Kirby knew what he was doing back in volume 1 with her. It wasn't until we get to volume 2 that we get to see the more feminine side of her. And that's what will, make people see her in that way. And then we also got what actually happened in, what Action Comics 592, 593. But I won't go into that anymore because I already talked too much about those two issues as a whole. Too much about that in these episodes of From the Desolate Small Press Publisher. It means you want to feel small and dainty and be manhandled by a dominant mommy. There is that take too. I'm not going to say that she's not wrong, but I'm not going to say that she's right either. But she's not wrong. But she's not really, whatever is inaccurate, but she's not wrong. I was like, I think it was going to be based on the Tom King. No. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. The Tom King run was pretty much more or less how Tom King brought Scott's feelings about her to the forefront. If you read the original Mr. Miracle, Scott was the only one that says, like, well, what we're going to do with Barter? Because it's like, Barter's a wild card. It's like, I don't think too many people can stop her, this, that, or the other. And Scott's reaction was, why are you worried so much? She's like, she's just a woman going around playing soldier. As long as there's not anything military for her to do, she should be okay. She should fall in line because she's not going to try to be out here, being out here, be like, oh, there's nothing to do. I was like, I need to go and conquer, the world and blah, 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 blah. It's like, it's just not in her nature. That's the way Scott treated her in the original volume 1. By the time we get to Tom King's run of Mr. Miracle, they have been married for quite some time, and he's up here feeling such a way about her that I believe it was in, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, in Infinite Crisis when she died. All of his emotions came out about how he truly felt about Barda. Barda was not just only his, it was not just only the friend, the lover, all this other stuff. It was like one of the few people that he genuinely respected and loved. And to lose her was like to lose like the only thing that mattered in his life. And that says a lot because he had no respect for Darkseid, who was his surrogate father. He had no love for the High Father, who is his actual father in New Genesis. He really didn't know any family outside of them. And he created his own family with Barda. So Barda was kind of like his everything, even though he would kind of jerk his to her from time to time. But that's just the way that it is here. I mean, I guess I'm talking too much here. And yeah, she realized, that 12-issue series. Yeah, that 12-issue series. The award-winning 12-issue series when he was actually writing pretty decently. Unlike with Danger Street. And unlike with Wonder Woman. But Mr. Miracle, he took some time and he did his thing here. Yeah, Joe, people need to read the source material. Yep. I mean, it's a lot of good stuff here. He's like, I love me some Cap. Now, as long as you love Steve Rogers or Sam Wilson, we're good. Heck, you could even Bucky Barnes. I give you props for that. But John Walker, we can't be boys. John Walker, even in the books, it's just kind of like, why? If anything, like I said, I like Bucky as Cap, and I did have some enjoyment reading Sam Wilson as Cap. But still, there's just so much Steve Rogers stuff that you could go back and reread and reread and reread. The John Walker stuff is just a tough read. That stuff is just tough. It's hard because it's like, wow, not an easy read. Yeah, I could take some GI Joe. I could take Marvel GI Joe and the new Skybound GI Joe. Devil's Due, I can't do. I can't do Devil's Due GI Joe. I can't. And so in the Image GI Joe, it's like it's okay, but Devil's Due GI Joe, no, can't do it. Can't do it. It's nice to collect. Some of the artwork is pretty. Story wise, it's like no, can't. Yeah, it's like they read Mr. Miracle Volume 2 and made Kindergarten Cop. Yeah. It's like the kids got on Barda's nerves, and she was up here. It's like, what am I going to do? And they focused in on the desk that she was sitting at. And before she knew it, she had literally put her fingers almost through the desk where you could see where she gripped the desk and the desk was about to get ready to collapse up under her grip. And then she came to her sisters like, oh, they are kids. I guess I got to be a bit more motherly. And she started thinking. You know, like I said, if when she's in that military mind, it's like, I just gave you an order. Why aren't you doing it? And then you just saw her anger flaring up. It was just like, and then she came to her sisters like, oh, these are kids. They don't know any better. But she got those kids straight. She got those kids straightened out nonetheless. But it's a sight to see. Oh, so so yeah, he was a fan of fourth wall breaking John Byrne She-Hulk. That was different. That was different all the way up to the whole Live and Die in LA, which again, I don't put that story where that was the first time that we find out that she was immortal and all this other stuff here. It was just a good little short story to end her series. But her understanding that she was being used as a trope to be kind of like the spokeswoman for female superheroes, and that's where when John Byrne came back in issue number 50 and was really explaining that here, and the joke behind issue number 40. Again, issue number 40 should not be $400. It was a joke to prove a point that TNA covers will sell books for female characters. However, they shouldn't have to. You should be really reading the story. And the editor, Renee, made a very good point here. It's like, yeah, it was a nice little gag here. You know, that was the whole point of it. It's like we shouldn't be sexualizing characters in that form, in that fashion. But people take things so far out of context, and it is what it is here. Oh, Tat's here. Cool. So we got Tat, jumping in here. So Tat is in the house here. And then okay, I just lost my place here. And I'm so thankful that you guys are being patient here with me because I don't have. I'm going to do the production update before I do the collection update here. The collection update, and the production update here is that I'm not doing this off of a laptop right now. I'm doing this off of my Samsung tablet as of right now because my laptop has died. I have to go ahead and replace the solid state drive again on the laptop that I use the most here. It's not like the laptop is broken, and it's not like the drive is completely bad. I can still get data and stuff off of it. It's more along the lines with solid state drives when the boot sector goes bad on it. That's pretty much all she wrote. So that happened on this second drive because it's not the first time I had to replace the hard drive on this laptop. This is the second time I had to do it. The drive before that lasted about 10 years. I just bought this replacement drive a year ago. So it lasted 1 year before something happened where the boot partition no longer works here. If I take the hard drive out of the laptop, plug it up to, if I could grab it real quick, and I can show you what I'm talking about. This is a USB to SATA connection kit. I could plug the drive on this side here and plug it into a USB port. I'm able to read all the data and stuff off of it, but at the same time, it's not allowing the solid state drive to boot at all. So when I turn on the laptop, it says that there's no bootable drive. And when I try to recover the boot, the boot partition, it just doesn't work. So it's just dead in the water here. So that's the reason why I am doing this stuff off of a Samsung tablet as of right now. And everybody is greeting one another as of right now, which is nice. Everybody is saying hello, how you doing, what's going on, what's shaking. See, nice and polite people. Gotta love that. Oh, yes. Now, Tad, if you do get on Aaron's show on Monday, you got to tell us how in the world 199 for a first print Ultimate Fallout 4 for $1.99. I get it if it was like one of the facsimile copies or one of the second printings, but first print, $1.99. I guess people, well, you said that it was at like a Goodwill type spot here. So yeah, they just don't know how to value that type of stuff. So I get it. You did mention that, so I get it here. Everybody's still greeting one another, and then she's angry at Tap because of the no 199 books for her. Well, she's still focusing out on AA Ron. And he's saying, "Thanks, God, it's my second copy. I found my first one in a 9 blind bag." Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense here. The one that I got that I just got graded, I actually pulled off of the shelf and I forgot about it. I pulled that when it first came out and completely forgot about it altogether. And it wasn't until I found it in storage that I was like, "Oh, I don't have to buy one." Oh, thank you. Thank you for making me aware that I'm not talking to as good. Yeah, yeah, that is true. Because I'm going to talk about the art of storytelling here in a moment, and why I might end up getting canceled because I'm going to answer a lot of unforeseen questions about that and some of the dumb stuff that I get asked on interviews, and I'm going to squash all that right here right now. Good, you're not a John Walker guy. You'd be surprised of how many people who love Cap love John Walker. Thank you. Somebody else who agrees. The Devil Do stuff was like, this ain't military. It's like y'all just went the whole, if I could say it, the DIC cartoon route. It was no longer about GI Joe and Cobra and a lot of the serious stuff that could actually happen in real life. Y'all went into like a lot of cartoony like stories that just did not land well up under Devil's Due. Now, I am happy that they did pick up the franchise for a bit to keep it going, but nah, dog. The stories were bad. The stories were bad here. Yeah, I'm going to talk about the art of storytelling and certain aspects that I kind of wish that interviewers would take into consideration before they ask certain questions. But we're going to get there in a minute. I'm going to try to get through the comments before I do the collector's update and everything to that magnitude here. By the way, my Wonder Woman 63 should be in the mail this week. So I'm going to have another Golden Age great in my hands. I'm so happy. I'm so happy, but it's going to be here. Yeah, it's like, yeah, that's crazy, guy. If that happens, Joe's a good person and he's family. Well, you'd be surprised of how people feel about certain things here. That's why I tell people who know me, who work for me, artists and everything, you got to be careful about what you argue about on the interwebs because people will take things so far out of context that they feel the way that they feel is no way that you're going to change it. Yeah, Joe, Matt, and I are going to, Joe, Matt, and I are going to shout you out during the Matt show tomorrow. Okay. Well, again, watching it live and watching it on the replay is the same to me. If people watch it, can't watch it live, at least watch it, when it's fully out there. And I do reply to comments. So if you do comment on it, I will come back and reply here. Oh yeah, I forgot you did find the Bloodstone one. Yeah, the if I could say the $1,000 over $1,000 Elsa Bloodstone the first appearance of Elsa Bloodstone one. And again, it's so messed up that places like Goodwill have no clue as far as what comic book values are. Yep, because those places just don't have any clue about comic book values here. Have you ever had Sex Criminals by Matt Fraction? I own I own issue number 1 of Sex Criminals. I have read many issues of Sex Criminals. I'm not a big fan of Matt Fraction because Matt Fraction gets very wordy. And my biggest gripe about Matt Fraction, and Parallax can vouch for this. The one series that I read that I thought was going to be very, very interesting turned out to get boring after the 3rd issue because he violated the whole thing about talking heads and show don't tell. And that series was called Satellite Sam. That's also a Matt Fraction. Now, mind you, Matt Fraction did very well for Marvel with X Factor. I like his X Factor run. Sex Criminals, I think, was his claim to fame. And he got into a lot of, if I could say, a lot of ideas that made Sex Criminals the way that it was. But when he got to Satellite Sam, it was like, yeah, that type of writing does not work for this type of story. It got to the point where Satellite Sam should have been maybe 8 issues instead of like 12. And that's only because he decided to tell more than show more. But that's just me. I probably need to go back and read the full series, but I do have a few issues of Sex Criminals, and do know that I have a copy of issue 1 of Sex Criminals, and that is in storage. So when is your Shogun and I could come? Yeah, that would be interesting. See, see what I've been doing here. We get people to work with other people, and that's great. So we finally got through all the comments here. I think that's everybody's here. Uh, with that being said, the collection update here. I haven't been able to update some of the graphics here, so we got a couple new issues of the Spirit that I have to go back and update the graphics for. We have a Golden Age Wonder Woman coming in here. No new updates for Film Force as of yet. No new updates for any of the X-Men type stuff here. And I forgot what the other one was that we have. Oh, Ghost. Ghost, if you paid attention last week, we had 2 more issues of Ghost that came in. I couldn't update the graphics because of the whole laptop situation. So that's where the collective update is at this time here. So with that being said, let's get to tonight's comment. Oh, also in the production update here, and I'm going to show this again. I know I showed this to those who follow us on Comic Book Spectrum, but I did get brand new acrylic markers here, so that means sooner than later we're going to have more sketch covers done in acrylic markers and the other Prismacolor markers that I have here. So we want to have more colorful sketch covers coming very, very, very soon. Oh, thank you so much on the collection about the collection update. I know some people tune out on the collection update because I have the graphics up and everything to that magnitude. And I know I would say things to the effect of, well, it is what it is. You know, we haven't got any of this, and this, but you're seeing how the collection is being built. And I tend to buy full runs before I could come back and read them. And once I read the full run, that's when I know I could really feel comfortable in commenting on stuff here. But getting into the nice topic that's going to come to me, the art of storytelling. And the reason why I chose this topic about the art of storytelling is because of the simple fact that when dealing with questions from interviewers here, especially when those are up here trying to figure out, well, you know, you're a minority creator, and you're just like your lead characters are of this race and of that race and blah 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 blah. And would you have better, better results if you change the race or nationalities of the characters? I'm up here looking at them kind of like, are you mad? Are you crazy? And the reason I go that way is because when you look at the art of storytelling, you could tell a story, a very good story, without having to bring up nationality, ethnicity, gender in most cases. When you bring up those three types of items, you're actually putting yourself in more or less of a trick bag to hope that adding those things to the story will enhance people's appeal to it. Now, mind you, when you tell a story, you're trying to tell a story for people to relate to the story itself. They want to be able to relate to the characters. They want to relate to the events that's going on. They want to have their own interpretation based upon how you're telling said story, where they could feel that they are a part of that story, that there's something that they could take away from it. And you have to understand that a lot of times storytelling is really more of a means of communicating to one another. Because when you get a very good story, that story gets told over and over and over again by many different people from their point of view. But yet, people nowadays want to be caught up in the socio-political aspects of why this character has to be this way, why this character has to be that way, what the significance of their gender or their culture has to be, instead of just taking the story itself. I'm going to use the story that was done by what's it called? AWA Upshot. And I'm not certain that most of you have read it, but I have read it all the way through. And the only thing I can say, it was a good first attempt for people who are not comic book readers, nor particularly are writers for this medium to attempt to do, but it fell flat. And the title of this series that went 5 issues was called Hit Me. And what the book was about is that it was a take on the sex workers, or it was a take on, people who work in the sex working field, primarily those that were into the sadomasochist type deal. So the creators of the series and the writers of the series were former sex workers who worked in sadomasochism. So they wrote kind of like this weird story about this one. I want to. It's like okay, I'm not going to get into the nationality. About this one female sex worker who pretty much, pretty much her job was to be, you know, for money, they're kind of like their beat up toy, for whatever sexual pleasure and everything to that magnitude here. And she lives with a so-called bodyguard. So if it's like if one of her sessions go awry, this guy gets called up and everything, and he comes in, cleans house, this, that, and the other. She walks away. Walks away. None the wiser. So the story starts out with them kind of like having like a rough patch where they don't want to say how they truly feel about one another. They just know that the relationship is more convenient to them than anything else. It's just like, you know, it's good that you are a part of my life, but they don't want to go that whole like, well, I truly love you and you love me, but the yada yada yada. So she tells the pseudo boyfriend about the next job that she's going to have, and it's like, this is the where I need you to be my backup just in case something goes wrong. So one thing led to another. She goes to the session, and when she walks into the session here, it's like she meets up with the guy that she's supposed to meet up with and everything. And everything seems to be good until they got broken in on. And when they got broken in on, it would turn out that the guy that called for the session was in trouble with this one mobster. And he owed a significant debt, gambling debt, and everything to that magnitude. And he was like, look, you know, let her go, this, that, and the other. I'm going to pay her, let her go. You can do whatever you want with me, this, that, and the other. So one thing led to another. You know, gunplay happened. The pseudo boyfriend comes rushing in. People end up being unalived. And, the so-called person that called the session, in his kind of like dying breath and everything, made certain that she got paid. It's like, here, take this, take this satchel and this, that, and the other. That was your payment. That was the payment before he, was unalived. So they get out the situation. They're running for their lives, making certain that nobody else falls, doing this, that, and the other. They get back to where they live. They look into the satchel, and it was like a little bitty sack. And in that sack was diamonds. We're not talking about one or two diamonds. We're talking about several diamonds, multiple millions of worth of dollars. And they kind of like looking at one another like, what's going on? What's going on in this, that, and the other? This is not unlike anything else that they have ever dealt with. So they're up there. It's like, okay, fine. We need to it's like we need to figure out a way to hide this and not try to bring any suspicion to ourselves until we know what's the deal here. So the following day, all of a sudden, it's like out of nowhere, it's like the pseudo boyfriend just disappears. Now, mind you, the woman still had the diamonds. She hid them and this, that, and the other. Boyfriend goes out to do like a regular 9 to 5 for security purposes and everything to that magnitude, and he just disappears. So the whole thing here is like, that's kind of strange. Why would he disappear and this, that, and the other? And this one dude followed her and this, that, and the other. And then that's when she figured out, it's like, oh, something is really up, this, that, and the other. And then the main big bad of the story plays his cards. Is pretty much says like, we can make this easy or we can make this hard. We got your pseudo boyfriend. Only thing you have to do is just give us our diamonds back. We give you back your boyfriend. You walk away from this clean. You can walk away from this clean. We don't have to speak to one another. everything is, said and done. And if you don't take this deal, we could make certain that the police know that you was involved with that shooting, and then there's going to be hell to pay. And we won't guarantee the safety of your pseudo boyfriend slash security. So she makes a play going through other sex workers to try to track down who this mobster really was and everything. And she goes down through all of these different hoops and loops and tunnels and everything within the story. And there was like a lot of backstabbing and everything about her and former clients, and how one of the former clients was in league with the said mobster that did whatever dealing with it. And by the time we get to issue 5 and the end of the story and whatnot, it was just like so anticlimactic that it was forgettable. Now, the reason I bring up Hit Me was, as you can see, I didn't bring up orientation, sexual orientation. I didn't bring up nationalities of the characters or anything to that magnitude. I just basically told you about the story. When you have great storytelling, it doesn't matter if the main character was Asian. It wouldn't matter if the main character was Irish. It doesn't matter if the main character was Jewish. It doesn't matter if the main character was African American. What matters is there something that is there that people can relate to in the bigger scheme of things? In this case, the reason why the story caught my attention, because of the simple fact that I was like, oh, this is about sex workers, and the fact that, what it's like, in a day in the life of a sex worker. It's like, oh, this could be interesting, and this, that, and the other. And for those who have read things like The Pro, it's like it could be very interesting, because The Pro to me was like, it was off the wall, nice capes and type scenario, dealing with a sex worker who was just given powers out of the blue, and just one thing led to another, It was a great little romp of a story. Hit Me was more kind of like that thriller type story, but it just fell kind of flat. But it doesn't mean that people couldn't relate to it if they knew nationality, ethnicity, sexual persuasions, and all this other stuff. It was great marketing material, but a lot of that stuff was immaterial to the actual story itself. Another story that I could say that, as much as I like Frank Choi's artwork, Fight Girls by AWA Upshot was garbage, especially at the very end, the very last issue that tied the end of the story together made the whole first 4 issues seem meaningless. Now, let me give you I'm going to give you the whole story. I'm going to give you the whole story, and you tell me. You tell me if I'm wrong or not. And I'm going to leave out those 3 things that I told you about. So, Fight Girls was pretty much about a competition. And it was a competition to determine the best suitor, or I should say suitress, because it was dealing with women, for this one king. So there was about 20 something women vying to be chosen as the next queen for this one king over this one galaxy. So they go through all these different terrains and everything. And it was more or less a survival of the fittest type deal. You have to kind of, it's not like Hunger Games, but it's more like, if you could take like Survivor with a lot of fear factor. and it was random. They just chose random spots for them for these women to test their metal and valor to find out who was worthy of being the next queen. Now, mind you, one of the things that was being done behind the scenes here is that people were also betting on it. So it was not just one of these weird royalty type, trials or anything. It was kind of like one of those things that they made tons of money off of. So as this was going along, we were seeing behind the scenes how corrupt the government was that this king was ruling over. So we have people from the outside trying to influence the actual trial of all of these women who were going through this trials and everything. And one thing led to another. There was sabotage amongst the contestants. There were people on the outside trying to figure out a way to manipulate the odds, manipulate the odds for certain people to have advantages and this, that, and the other. And eventually everything winded down and we ended up getting one person that won. And before she gets coronated, they set up everything, they got her through the through makeup and all this other stuff for her coronation and everything. And the king comes in. It's like, no, I was like, before the coronation and everything, I want to have sexual relations with my new queen. So one thing led to another, and then all of a sudden, as they were about to get ready to have relations, she made an assassination attempt and was successful. And the series ended with her getting away with somebody else who was supposed to be in the competition but couldn't be a part of it from the other side. And I'm up there like, really? That was the whole point? The whole point of this whole exercise was, and the surprise ending was, oh, it was supposed to be an assassination attempt at the very end to this one king, and that's how this one king ended up dying. Again, bad storytelling, but we saw why things like sexual persuasion, ethnicity, religious affiliation, all that other stuff had no bearing on that story whatsoever. Has no bearing. And when I say it has no bearing, is because the way that the story was told, it didn't matter. You could imagine any woman, whether it be short, fat, ugly, ultra muscular, in that competition. It didn't matter. Whoever you imagine to be the best and most perfect fit for this king would end up being an assassin to take him out. It doesn't matter. But that comes back to what I was saying about the art of storytelling. If you tell a good story, especially if it's a really good story, people are going to embellish on certain things. And they might embellish on certain things about, how they talk, how they walk, how they look, and all this other stuff. That doesn't make the story better. That is only the emphasis of how that person wants to tell said story. Another way to really look at it is, let's take something that's a classic. Let's take something like, Cinderella. Let's look at what the original Chinese version of it was versus the Brothers Grimm versus what Disney did with it. With the Chinese having things in their culture with foot binding and all this other stuff, it would have made the whole thing about being able to wear the glass slipper so much more valuable in the story and so much more meaningful because women then in that culture would have done what it would have take to become the next princess, regardless of knowing that they couldn't fit the shoe itself. Now, the Brothers Grimm did not take the foot binding culture aspect of it when they told their version of the story. It still worked. However, Disney's kind of sanitized it down about the length of what the women were doing, even more so. Because something like that would have been obvious. But you have to look at it from who is telling the story at that point. With the original Chinese lore, the way that they told it was based upon their culture. So if you heard it from their point of view, you would have heard a lot of the really, really graphical details of the length of a lot of what all of these people were willing to go through to be married to royalty. The Brothers Grimm, you know, they brought it down a notch, but they kept a lot of that aspect about how bad what people would go through. Disney, not so much. They sanitized it down. They made it seem like, oh yeah, it was time consuming for the prince to go from town to town to town to town to town to town. But they're not talking about how people were going to war and all of the cultural significance of the foot binding from the Chinese version of that story to really give you that impact as far as why it was so important, why that slipper was that important. Because when you truly think about it, it's like if a person could look at a shoe and know that it's not their size, why go through it? I mean, it is what it is. I mean, we could go through a lot of them. It's like Sleeping Beauty had a lot of, depending on which culture that you take that story from, had a lot more significant detriments to that story being told the way that it was originally set up to be, as opposed to eventually we get to like the sanitized version of it when we get to Disney. This is why you have to be careful. This is why I advise those who do interviews to be careful on the questions that you ask. Because when you come back and ask a creator, oh, you think your story would be better if you had more of this type of lead or that type of lead? You know, do you really think, we should have characters like this in this type of story? A lot of times people are going to give you the most PC, politically correct answer for that. But if we really tell you the honest truth, who cares? And that's the honest truth. Who cares? Because that person could be of any persuasion. What we care about is making sure that the story is being told and that it is relatable, that you could pick something in that story that you can relate to and follow and understand and be able to go on that journey. Whether if you like the main character or not, or you like a supporting character and all this other stuff, there's going to be something that is there that's going to help you along that journey until you get to the end and you'd be like, yeah, I kind of dig that. But that's where a lot of times people get caught up, especially in this day and age. People get caught up in, oh, it has to be like this, and we have to have this type of representation in it. Okay. If you're going to have that type of representation in it, what is the significance of having that representation? Does it really make or break your story? If it doesn't make your story, why put it in there? And if you do get too ham-fisted with it, does it break your story? And a lot of times I come back, and this is something that, like I said, I'm learning now at the age that I'm at right now. Now, I want you guys to understand, I haven't been writing comics for a very long time. When I say for a very long time, I'm talking about we're about to get into our 20th, well, at least I'm about to get into my 20th year being in this profession, even as a part-time writer. I'm still learning, and I'm still growing based upon what I'm learning about the golden age and how a lot of stuff that was being done in the golden age. And when I look at golden age comic book writing, the stories were written in such a way where the social political aspect of it was more so for the marketing portion. The overall story did not matter. The presentation of that story was what was controlled by editors during that time. And when you truly look at it, you have to be mindful of the way that the social political aspect of those times were. Because when you truly think about it, if you're a Superman fan, what nationality is truly an alien? Especially an alien from another planet. It does not necessarily mean that it is Caucasian. They're an alien. Anybody's race could be assumed. However, for presentation purposes for the 1930s, yeah, they made him Caucasian. People get so hung up on that aspect that they forget it's an alien from another planet. I could say the exact same thing about Starfire and the controversy about Starfire in the Titans live action series and the outrage that some people have. I feel like, tell me this here. A Tamaranian with orange skin assumes what nationality? There is none. There is none. That's the one thing that makes the story more powerful because anybody can relate to it. If you have ever been ostracized or alienated or set to the side, you can relate to her plight. It had nothing to do with her nationality whatsoever. She was an alien. Same thing as I said with Superman. Same thing could be said about Martian Manhunter. And Martian Manhunter was Martian. And one of the things that I was glad that eventually in Martian Manhunter lore is that they made mention of many different types of Martians. The same thing that could be said about the Kree, about pink and blue. But coming back to what I was saying here, those three things that I mentioned in the very beginning matters very little in a story. As long as the characters are relatable and the story is told correctly, the only time that nationality, gender, and ethnicity should come up if there is something that is culturally significant in that story that has to be addressed. And if that's the case here, then you make a big deal about the ethnicity to highlight why that has to be brought up in the story to make it relatable. Once you do that, you leave it alone. Let the people love the character. Let the people love the story. Again, I made mention about the reason why Miles Morales is so beloved. He's so beloved because he was not a Peter Parker clone. He had his own origin. He had his own problems. Yeah, he has Peter's mantle, and it was successfully given to him by Peter, especially in the Ultimates title. Peter gave him the mantle. People forgot that. We still have 616 Peter. That's not going to go away. But this was one time that the mantle was passed, and it was passed to a person who can handle it. But people don't care because there was too much emphasis put on the nationality instead of looking at the story for what it was. I could say the same thing with Kamala Khan and the passing of Miss Marvel. I could say to its detriment the same thing about Carol Danvers becoming Captain Marvel. And like I said, that's to its detriment because technically the mantle was not truly passed from Marvel to her. And what's weird about the whole thing between Marvel to Carol Danvers is that people keep forgetting about Monica Rambeau. Monica Rambeau was technically the person who was Captain Marvel. Held the title of Captain Marvel for, I believe it was about somewhere about almost a decade. I have to go back to find out from her introduction from the Amazing Spider-Man. I want to say Amazing Spider-Man 13 to about 1989 or so, when she became Photon in the Avengers. But during that time, she was the Captain Marvel that most of us grew up with. That was from Marvel. Marvel died. She took over the mantle, and it made sense. And then out of nowhere, because Monica became Photon, Carol Danvers takes over the mantle, and not really in a good way. But let me get back to some of your comments here, because I want to address anything that you guys said here. And I know I probably missed yeah, okay, so yeah, Parallax was saying being Lil's love the comic book update and pickup times. Yep, that like I said, that's one of the most favorite times here. And Tat is saying you're spot on. And like I said, it's like, and like I was telling Parallax, the reason I feel like I may get canceled because sometimes people just don't like harsh truths. They want to love what they feel and feel what they want to feel, and there's no logic. Yeah, Cinderella was originally a Chinese tale. Yep. Yep. He's an ET pretty much. Yep. She's a smoking hot alien talking about Starfire. Yeah, bring back Monica as Captain Marvel. Brilliant. Why didn't Marvel just, because again, they gave her the mantle as a placeholder. And that goes to show you how publishing companies were really touchy feely about certain mantles and certain character names, like Captain Marvel, the whole thing that they went through with Fawcett and DC. And then they really had the rights to Captain Marvel, and because they weren't using it, they was afraid that if they don't use it after a certain time, DC could go back to the course and say, "Hey, they don't use this character anymore. Their copyrights and the copyright for it could lapse, and they could take it over." So they gave it to Monica Rambeau, and they transitioned that title from Marvel to Monica, and it worked. they only gave it for about 10 years, and then all of a sudden it's like now here's Carol Danvers having it, even though she was Miss Marvel from like 1978 to maybe like 2000, 2003 or something like that. Then they made that transition over to Captain Marvel for no apparent reason. It's like, well, she's Kree. Why can't she be the next successor to Marvel? Because again, that was several decades ago. They had already established her as Miss Marvel. But you know, that's just the way publishing companies are here. So that's part of the problem with all of that. But saying everything to say here is that when you create your story, you don't automatically start thinking about nationality and all this other stuff. You start thinking about characters and how characters react and how characters would see situations and the relatability to situations that the characters are in. Nationality, gender, sexual persuasion, and all this other stuff is secondary. It only gets brought up if the story dictates you have to talk about it. That's probably one of the reasons why I had a hard time bringing out this book. For those who don't know, this is Legends of the Giant Slayer. And that was more out of my curiosity about, you know, why certain things were never talked about in lore, especially dealing with female giants. And then when I looked at it in the more socio-political aspect of it, why is that aspect so fetishized? But it is what it is. But I did not approach that title by saying, oh, we're only going to talk about this type of nationality and this type of sexual orientation and all this other stuff. It's like, no, I'm going to look at everything. We're going to have, anthological stories that touch about just about everything. So it's not going to be just about one type of culture. It's going to be across multiple cultures. But it is what it is. And now that's the reason why I said what I told some of my watchers before. This topic may get me canceled because people are going to feel that, yeah, ethnicity is important. Gender is important. All the stuff is important. It's like, it's only important depending on the story that you're telling. If you telling me about a coming of life story about a character that's really having a trouble finding their sexual orientation, it makes sense to talk about sexual orientation. It's logical. But to talk about someone's sexual orientation when they're going off on a swashbuckling adventure on the high seas, that doesn't make any sense. That part does not make any sense. That's kind of like extra fluff information that does not make or break a story. However, using, I believe, Matt's example of sex criminals, that makes perfectly good sense when you're talking about all these people who are criminals who do things on a more sexual orientated map here. It makes more sense to talk about their idiosyncrasies dealing with that topic. It builds the story, not break it. Unless you go ham-fisted. And when you go ham-fisted, then you lose people. But that's the major difference here. And this is one of the reasons why I felt that people may try to cancel me, because it's like, as a minority yourself, how come you're not just saying we have to have more of this, that, and the other? It's like, I'm more of the type of person that I write stories. And my stories have characters of all persuasions. Who I make a main focus and who I don't is up to the story that I'm telling. I don't try to ham fist anybody. If I tell a story and it happens to be a Caucasian lead, so be it. If it happened to be an African American lead, so be it. If it happened to be a Hispanic lead, so be it. If the lead character is female, and yeah, I write mostly stories that have female characters. Why? Because they are harder to write than male. Trust me, they are harder to write than male. At least in my point of view. Now I have other writers that tell me different, but no, I find it harder to write female characters, so that's why I do them, because I want to perfect that craft. So if you're going to tell me that I have to do it a certain way, I'm going to look back and be like, if you believe that, I'm going to have a notebook, a pen, and say, sit down, write with me. Show me why this is important. Show me the story that you're going to tell. And make it make sense. I challenge those people, because I'm not going to be the one to say we don't need this type of story, we don't need that type of story. I'm going to say, write the story, make it work. Because until you write a story, until you sit down and build a whole entire universe surrounding said story, you're not going to understand why those three things do not matter. People keep forgetting, when you write a story, you're just not writing fiction. You're building a world. And when you build a world, you have to think in terms of world. Sometimes you might have to think in terms of universe. And when you think in terms of universe, you're not even thinking about just planet Earth. You're thinking about everything, anything that could be out there that could come in contact with your characters. And when you start thinking on the bigger scale, those things that are being brought up on the social political aspect goes away. It does not matter as much, unless, like I said before, there's something culturally so that you have to mention it for the reader to understand the situation. And it's just simple as that. And on that note, we're reaching almost the 2 hour mark here. So hopefully, like I said before, I am trying to do my best here to keep things to a great, to a great time frame here, where my East Coast people could enjoy being the future and enjoy, the beginnings of their Sunday, and the rest of everybody else could enjoy their Saturday here. I know over the last couple of weeks we've been ending early here. I do like to have 2 hour episodes here, and this just happened to be one of them. But let me go ahead and take a look here, and we got Creative take over here. Welcome on in. I see you got here. I'm not canceling people. I'm saying people are going to try to cancel me based upon what I talk about. Yes, I'm still in the comic book. I'm still in the comic book making business here. I have not stopped. So, who is behind getting you canceled, or what do you would you what would wait? That's like, you don't need to answer that, but it is more than that. You stand by what you believe in in your heart to tell, and that's the thing here. From my experience, it's like, I have to tell people, it's like, especially with certain interviews, it's like there's certain things that in interviews I don't try to come off as if I'm being, that I've been offended. And I rarely tell people when I get offended in an interview. And some of the things that I hear about is like, depending on what type of interviewer you have here. Like, for example, interviewers who are more in the Afro futuristic type aspect of things here would want me to focus more on, well, what are you doing more, to highlight more African American characters in your writing. I feels like, you know, that to me doesn't make me one way or the other. I do have African American leads in my comic books. However, at the same token, I could show them that the majority of African Americans don't buy my work. When I see more African Americans buy my work, I might go that route here. But my main goal here is to tell a great story. And as I tell my story, as people read my stories, they see how much preparation and work I put into it. Just because it doesn't appeal to African Americans right off the top doesn't mean that it's a bad story. My question to them is, why isn't this type of a story not appealing to you? I shouldn't have to hit people upside the head to say, "Hey, I'm a black comic creator. Hey, look at me." You could look at me face to face to know what nationality I am. I should have to hit you upside the head. And me being African American should not be a deterrent for you trying out my wares either. But you'd be surprised of some of the socio-political questions that come up in these type of interviews. And that's the reason why I feel the way that I do. That's like when I take episodes like these and put the real truth out there, that people are going to come back and twist those words to be like, "Oh, he's not really for us." It's like, no, it's not even that. I've been there, done that. I have seen all sides of it. I have gone out there and promoted myself that way and saw that's not the right way to do it. I shouldn't jump out there about social political politics. My job is to write great comic books, and that should be my focus, writing comic books. Now you're making me think about one of those shows that I was like a keynote speaker on, or at least on a keynote panel, talking about what it's like to be in comics and everything. And I was quite offended by most of the panelists at this one show. Now, mind you, this is another pro African American comic book show. And one of the things that I said here, and I was hoping that, the panelists there would be like, yeah, we need to do this more. It fell on deaf ears. And the one thing that I said is this: we need to stop being upset about not getting into Artist Alley. We're competing against the whole entire world for Artist Alley. If you're going to make that step to being a publisher and putting this stuff out here for real, put the money up and get your booth to be right next to Marvel and DC and all these other publishers. They want to work on a narrative. They're trying to keep us out. Now, if it's like, no, from my experience, especially dealing with Reed Pop, it's the opposite. This is a money game. If you're not willing to put the money up to promote yourself the way that you need to promote yourself, you're going to get the results that you get. They weren't hearing that. They want to promote the whole, they're keeping us out of certain venues, they're keeping us out of certain markets, and people was eating that up out of, left and right. And I was like, no, nobody's keeping us out. I'm going toe to toe with them. It's up to you guys as the readers to seek people like me out. I tried to put the beacon out there to say, here, come and look at what I got here. I could only go so far. But those who have bought into and like what I do, I need your help just as much as me beating my own drum into advertising. But they don't want to hear stuff like that in most cases. But that's just what it is. And that's the nature of it. Do I get angry and bitter about it? No, because that's business. People have to understand the business aspect of this industry. Now, I granted, a lot of people don't understand it and they want to get into that social political, if I could say jibber jabber, but it's not 100% accurate. Joe, don't be concerned with being canceled when you're so thoughtful with your explanations, and that's the whole thing. I'm thoughtful. I'm not saying that there's problems, but I'm also saying that you also have to look at everything from its proper perspective. I see your point, but you're forgetting one important thing: character development. Yep, but that takes time. That I'm not going issue by issue because again, with the way things are going nowadays in industry, there's no such thing as an ongoing series anymore. So if you're doing like 6-issue miniseries or 12-issue maxi series just to tell a story, a lot of the character development and everything is going to be rushed anyway. Yeah, I think it's almost better when you are left with what happens in a story because that's gets people talking about good or bad. And again, that's why the synopsis that you give and all this other stuff should leave out a lot of the social political babble. And this is one of the reasons why I try not to say, "Oh, my stuff is like this or like that." People need to read your story and make what it is of what it is. And like you said, leave it up to them to make the determination if it's good or bad. Plus, I need to hear that Ben sound tune too. I get you, Aaron. It's like we need more writers with your mindset because then the stories would draw you in, and then just the art. Yep, and that's the key thing. It's a perfect marriage between writing and art. Books that don't have great artwork, or at least in great, and I'm going to say it in this aspect, books that don't have artwork that appeals to the masses may be 100% fitting to the writing that is being done, but people would overlook it because artwork is not appealing. But if they take the time to sit down and read it, they would see how great it is. Now, comics with great artwork with very bad story, you're done, son. That book would only be as good as the person who likes the artwork. So that means that if I'm not following said artist, that book would sit on the shelf. Just saying. And Aaron is saying good points here. And that's all I'm pretty much bringing out there. I'm just bringing out actual, a point of view that is not really, trying to be like condescending or anything to that magnitude, but to get you guys start talking about the bigger aspect and to understand the point of view of what we the writers have to go through. Not to say that we're not trying to give you guys what you want as far as being entertained, but we can't focus on that type of stuff up front. Unless the story dictates it, we can't focus on that type of stuff. We can't do that type of stuff. The marketing, and this is probably one of the reasons why marketing should be separate from editing. And I believe that a lot of the marketing departments are the editors in these bigger publishers now. Because unless it's checking all these different boxes, we can't put it out there. And I'm up here, it's like, well, you're ruining the story because you're putting the social political stuff out there in front of the story. The story should be king. And when I say story, we're talking about both the writing and the artwork. But anyway, we went over the 2 hour mark by about 5 minutes here. So I got to wrap things up here. So as always, live life, grow, and be well. I will be here next week. We probably have a different topic here, something that's more positive. Because, like I said, I always like to talk about positivity, but tonight's episode was something that's been on my mind for quite some time here, and we need to talk about that because when I see people who are really trying and really want to make a positive impact in this field, I see them trying to want to jump out there to say, I'm going to make this type of a statement in my work. It's like, no, don't make the statement in the work. Just tell the story. If your story is good, it will do the work by itself as far as making that statement. You don't have to hit people upside the head as far as all the other stuff that you want to say social politically. Just tell a great story. The point we make itself known. And you don't have to ham fist nobody. And on that note, I give you guys on the East Coast your Sunday, since you are about 6 minutes into the future, and the rest of us enjoy the rest of your Saturday. And we are out. I hope you enjoy it. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like the content here. And I am up for suggestions here. So if you want me to talk about certain things, let me know in the comments as well. Until next week, we are out. Have a great rest of your weekend.